Are you active in recruiting?
To some degree, yeah, I am. I try to, it's a very sensitive thing to recruit.
Well, you certainly go to games to see the talent.
Oh yeah, I go see the talent. But in terms of recruiting a kid to go to North Carolina, that's a very personal and family decision. Maybe North Carolina doesn't best suit that kid. Maybe.
No, I'm talking about once they're in college.
Once they're in college, it's not a recruitment anymore. It's a draft.
Yeah, but you can decide who it is you think.
Well, right. You can evaluate it, but if you're at the 9th pick, you got to have 8 other teams pass on that particular player. So you're going to have to understand what may fall back at you at 9. So we have a good department that we put so much emphasis because, as you see, the star players are not rushing to small markets. So your selection of the talent has to be a little bit more worked at and selective for your team and your culture and for the city and from a coaching standpoint as well as from an organizational standpoint. So I put more emphasis on draft than what I used to, because you're not going to be able to get the Bronze of the world to come to Charlotte.
You didn't wake up, or when you were playing for the Bulls, I'm sure it was not on your mind that your dream is one day to own a team. But I'd like to know when the light shined on you that this is something I want to do, and what was it that motivated you to own a team? Because no player's ever done that before.
Well, I always wanted to be connected to basketball, because my love is always going to be towards basketball. And the best way that I think I can pass on the knowledge that I have for the game of basketball to tomorrow's players is through ownership. Being able to earn the respect of the players, be able to communicate with the players, to give them the understanding of what it takes to play in the league and to excel within the league. So when I got out of basketball in 2003, actually, I got out in 1998, when the team was dismantled. I really didn't know what I was going to do in terms of ownership. So I looked at, and I was presented an opportunity to be a part of a ownership in Washington from a general manager standpoint. And with that came an education of understanding what it took. So quite naturally, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to understand you're going to make mistakes. The most important thing about making mistakes is being able to learn from them and not be able to duplicate the same mistake. So when I got the opportunity to be a part of the Washington Wizards at the time, Ted Leonsis brought me in as a part of his group. That's where I got my feet wet in terms of ownership. And it was intriguing enough. I didn't have the experience of ownership. I knew what it took, which was a lot of money, a lot of financial support, but the knowledge in terms of being able to transition from a basketball player who could impact a game and determine the outcome to where now you sit up in an office and have not the same control. You have to be able to live vicariously through the players that you select, which sometimes you're going to make mistakes. And with that mistakes, you got to, be able to make adjustments. And that's what I learned in Washington. And, in my first couple of years, I was a general manager. Then the next couple of years, I went down and I played, because I still felt I can impact the game from a player standpoint. Not with the same magnitude of what happened in Chicago, but from a teaching standpoint, saying that, okay, a lot of these kids, they believe in leadership from a physical sense, where that I can show you how hard it takes to work. I'm in the gym, the first one in the gym, the last one in the league, blah, blah, blah. And I felt like I could pass that to the players.
So
that's where the Washington experience happened.
So what I'm hearing you say is that your first and greatest passion is basketball.
Yes, at that time, yes.
Okay. Now we're fast forwarding all these years to today, and you are a very complete businessman.
Sure.
with many different interests. Do you have a favorite amongst your businesses? Do you spend more time in one than the, I mean, you have, in addition to the team, I can go on and on. I mean, the list
Right.
is pages, but you know, your Jordan shoe brand, I'm told, does $3 billion a year. That ain't hay.
But it was a process with that as well. I mean, and it's dots being connected. You know, it's basketball, something that, you know, when the shoes were at its peak, you know, I played at a high level. And the consumer saw that, and it basically authenticated everything about that shoe. What we've been able to maintain is being able to communicate to the consumer from a basketball, from an ownership standpoint, their preference for that product.
Do you spend a lot of time
I spend
in
a
the
lot.
shoe business?
I spend most of my, if you look at all my portfolio of things that I'm involved in, my strongest passion outside of the ownership of the Hornets is the Jordan brand. Because to me, I can impact that in a much greater sense. To be able to continually talk to that consumer, interact with that consumer. It's not a draft. It's not, you know, it's not where I'm, you know, dependent on how the season ends to determine if I have a draft pick in the first 12 or 13 picks. So if I had to pick of all the, you know, things that I'm involved in, the most important is the Jordan brand because it is my DNA. It is who I am. The Hornets is a product of the personnel that I assemble. And if it doesn't have that DNA, you may not get the same results. So it's a work in progress with the Hornets. With the Jordan brand, it is successful because I can impact it. Or that, you know, how often do you see the symbol of the brand, an icon, that can communicate and say what, you know, what I think or impact that product.
And it truly is global.
Yes, it's truly
Truly is
global.
global. So having the Hornets and having the shoe, I understand, I don't know anything about it, but you have car dealerships.
Sure.
What was that about? Was that just an
It was an
investment?
opportunity presented to me early on from a friend of mine in Wilmington, North Carolina. He owned car dealerships. He came to me and says, well, you know, I got this opportunity to get involved in a car dealership. Would you have an interest? That was purely from a business sense.
What about the restaurants?
Same exact thing.
But you've had restaurants for a while, and now apparently recently you've been increasing and opening new restaurants.
Because of the success of it, the Cornerstone guys who have basically, you know, I partner up with, they help and they manage the restaurant scenarios. And what we have been able to is to understand what works with the consumer, once again. And we've been able to grow that business. So initially, you know, when I was coming out of college or when I was in the NBA early on, would I have said that I would have been a restaurant owner? No. Once that was presented to me and I understood the dynamics of, you know, that business, we were able to grow that, utilizing my persona in a whole different way, tied into restaurants.